The monolith drawing is a drawing principle that we developed about 5 years ago. And the idea of the drawing sequence comes from a deep love for historical architecture. And it comes out of a practice of dealing with historical architecture for about 25 years. A practice where there's always been a very careful negotiation of distance between what is contemporary and what is historical. The monolith drawings have been an exercise in getting closer to that idea of historical architecture, which for us in the first 20th century and now in 21st centuries is a difficult thing to do, because these things have happened before, sort of as a romantic attitude perhaps, or as a postmodern attitude. And the monolith drawing has the intention not to do it in a romantic way or not to do it in a postmodern way, but to really work through notions of remembrance in order to learn from historical architecture, in order to produce something new, in order to produce contemporary architecture. So the idea of mimicry, or even working through notions of resemblance, is therefore excluded. The monolith drawing is not so much about trying to, for example, draw the way classicist architecture would have been drawn, or draw in the way that Gothic architecture would have been conceived. The monolith wants to work through two very particular ancient production techniques. The first one is stereotomy. But stereotomy was a way that stonemasons used to draw in order to define the shape of their masonry blocks in order with which to then build vaults or domes. So that's an ancient production technique that we somehow reintroduce. And the second production technique is the idea or the concept of ex uno lapide. That is a principle that comes out of sculpture, where the idea is that any kind of sculptural form is produced out of a single solid mass, a single solid stone. And both of these techniques allow us to produce architecture in a very different way than perhaps more classical techniques. It, for instance, excludes the idea of building up architectures through componentry. It sort of avoids the idea, if you sculpt something out of a single stone, it avoids the idea of having to think about components such as walls and floors and windows. And the exercise becomes somehow a pure exercise about space, about if it starts with a solid piece of stone, of gradually freeing the space out of that stone, which is in many ways almost the reverse thinking of an architecture that you build with components.